Hi there everybody, I'm Bill Keller, Thrive Life Consultant, and today I want to talk to you about the Thrive Food Tasting Party. There are many different ways to market Thrive. You can come up with all kinds of creative ways, but for most people, the bedrock of their business is the food tasting party. So I want to talk a little bit about that and show you a demonstration of a party. Now, let me give you just a little bit of history here. When Thrive first started, it was actually called Shelf Reliance, and their first product was actually the food rotation system food storage rack. And they were all about prepping and long-term food storage, and all they had was the racks, storage racks. And then they introduced the line of freeze-dried food, and they called the food Thrive Life, but it was still called Thrive Life by Shelf Reliance. And they were, when we first started with the parties, it was all about long-term food storage and that sort of thing. And then they started to realize that there was a whole market that was much bigger than that in the daily use of the food. So they started to de-emphasize the storage, long-term storage, and the prepping. And so they changed their name of their company to Thrive Life. But notice that if you get a check deposited into your account for your commissions, it still says in the bank account, it still says Shelf Reliance. That's their legal name, I guess, and they're doing their DBA, doing business as Thrive Life. They also, when they first started, they used to have a lot of different emergency supplies besides food, like solar-powered emergency radios and water storage canisters and just all kinds of things like that. Solar-powered flashlights. And as they started to get away from the prepping and started to go more into the daily use, they got rid of all of that stuff. And so when we used to do the parties, we would cook a meal for the people that were there, and not that we would feed them a whole meal, but we would cook up a pot of something and they could get a taste of it. And so we would have to bring in all of the cans of the food, and we would cook it right there in front of them. But it was a lot involved in that, because you had to bring in a half a dozen cans and measure everything out with them and all that. But like I said, they've been moving away from the storage and more towards the daily use. And in July of 2017, just last month, they introduced the Simple Plate, which is the new product. And at that point, they have completely jumped out of the prepping market and into the daily use market. Now, if you're marketing to preppers, or you desire to market to preppers, everything is still in place to do that, because all you have to do is say 25 years shelf life, and if people are prepper minded, they get it. You don't even have to explain it to them. They get it. But there's a whole market out there of daily use that is just virtually untapped. Thrive believes, and so do I, that freeze-dried food is the way of the future for food preservation. The first step was, originally all they had was like salting and pickling and stuff like that. And then canning was invented, and then freezing was invented. And both of those, canning and freezing, people had a hard time accepting it at first. Now it's just daily accepted. Freeze drying is the next step in the food preservation technology, and people look at it and they don't trust it, just like they didn't trust canning when it was first invented. But I believe that as more and more people begin to trust it and understand the benefits of it, that it will become the wave of the future. And so Thrive has jumped onto that. And there is literally a billion-dollar industry out there, because we're not just marketing to preppers anymore. Now we're marketing, our market is basically anybody that eats. So it's huge. And if we can turn people on to using it on a daily basis and help them to realize how far superior freeze drying is to frozen or canned, then you've basically got a customer for life. And Thrive has, with Simple Plate, has positioned themselves as one of the leading companies in this new technology of freeze-dried food for daily use. So it's really very exciting. Now, the idea with the Simple Plate is not only is it a fast and easy meal, of course, but also they still have all the old, you know, the canned freeze-dried food and individual ingredients in the can that they've always had. A lot of people have been reluctant to use that, or they buy it and they're intimidated by it. They don't know how to use it. They don't understand. Just add water and cook like you normally do. But a lot of people are really intimidated by that. So the Simple Plate sort of bridges that gap, because you give them a meal that's got complete instructions and everything is measured out and it's very, very easy to use. They'll use that and they'll get used to using freeze-dried food, and then they'll start looking at, oh, look at all of this other stuff I can buy freeze-dried, and then I can cook my own recipes as well. So it's a great step for them to do, to be able to introduce people to freeze-dried food in a very simple, easy to understand manner, especially if people are intimidated by trying to use it. And then it's just only barely beginning to tap into this billion-dollar market of basically they changed the name from, you know, from the Q delivery system to just deliveries, and now they call it the grocery box. With the name grocery box, they are positioning themselves as being the local grocery store. The idea is, instead of going down to, you know, ShopRite or Giant or wherever you go for, you know, King Soopers or whatever, you're just going to go to the Thrive grocery store. And if we can set that idea in people's minds, then that will really increase our sales as people just go to Thrive for their groceries. So when they introduced the new Simple Plate, they also introduced a completely new way to do the tasting party. And most of you are new enough to the company that you don't really know the old way, so I'm not going to get into that, but let's just look at the new system. And at the party, at the convention, they did a presentation of what the new tasting party will be like. And it's presented by 3 women who are all platinum executives in the company and all, you know, really successful. And in fact, were instrumental in developing Simple Plate and instrumental in developing the entire new presentation. So what I'm going to do here is I'm not going to try to duplicate what they've done, because it's good. I'm going to put a link in right down below in the description to the video of the Simple Plate tasting presentation that they did at the convention in July of 2017. So go ahead down below and watch that video. And this is not only good for how to do a tasting in a large group, but it's just good for how to approach people in general, even on a general one-on-one basis. And really, you know, there are many ways to do a tasting. You can gather 30 or 40 people together in a room and do a big presentation, or you can just invite one couple over for dinner and then cook a Simple Plate for them. It's as easy as that. They come over, don't tell them necessarily what you're doing. You can if you want, you know, come over and try this new food. Or you can just invite them over for dinner and then wait until they get there, and then cook the Simple Plate and let her see what you're doing. I guarantee you questions will arise. And the approach that you use is the approach that these women talk about in this presentation. So, you know, don't make it more complicated than it is. You can do a big group presentation, or you can just do a presentation one-on-one, and it's just not that difficult if you have that kind of an idea of it. So go ahead and watch the video, watch it many times, take notes on how to approach it and how to market the new Simple Plate. So go ahead and look at the video down below.